Welcome back. All right, now I've got 13 teams on the board. And the funny thing is, these are 13 teams that we can make arguments about whether or not they're contenders. And yet there's teams that aren't on the board that people would say, hey, why isn't my team a contender? Right. So with the league having its scheduling done the way it is this year, which is just in the division, it means that there are likely some teams that have records that are better than they would have been if they played every team. There are also teams with worse records than they would have had if they'd played every team. I'm looking at Buffalo on that one. But the reality is, we have some very interesting setups here, and we have some teams on this board who are actually going to go out in the first round. They have to. There's just no way around it. I have 13 teams on the board. That means that not all these teams can survive the first round. And if these teams are going to be contenders, well, between now and Monday, how much pressure is on these teams to make a move? So that's the reasoning behind doing this video. So that's the question. Which of these teams right now is going to be under a lot of pressure? Which of these teams might be in like a one and done kind of situation? So what I've done is I've got the records, the names in red. Those are names of prominent unrestricted free agents on their rosters, and not necessarily all of them, but just noteworthy UFAs after this year. And some teams aren't going to be able to bring everybody back. So we'll start with, and we'll go in order, Carolina, who currently are number one in the NHL, 39 games, 27, 9-3, 57 points. It's been a great year for them. And when you look at their UFA list this offseason upcoming, it's noteworthy. Again, Martinook, Paquette, that's your forwards, and then of course Hamilton on the blue line. They have to keep Dougie Hamilton, but he's gonna cost them some money, and rightfully so. He's gonna ask himself for a large raise. And I didn't even include RFAs because RFAs is a whole other. We can talk about that some other time. But for the UFA market, Hamilton's warranting a raise. And you know what? Mrazek and Reimer have both played well enough that they should get good contracts. I would think they keep Mrazek and let Reimer go, and go with Mrazek and Nedeljkovic next year. But Mrazek's going to get paid. He's played really well. So the one thing that might hold Mrazek back is injury concern, right? So you might be able to argue his contract down a little bit, saying, well, he plays well, but he gets injured a lot. You might be able to argue that contract down. But yeah, Carolina, there's going to be some pressure to, while they're number one in the league, to go out and maybe add a little bit of depth. Not a lot, because again, I don't think this is going to be the deadline where we're going to see a ton of big moves happen. But yeah, adding a little bit of depth here and there could absolutely help the Carolina Hurricanes. Toronto. 40 games, 27, 10-3, 57 points. You will notice that the top six teams on this board are all within 1 point of one another. So, yeah, that happens. Toronto, their record is fantastic. You ask any Toronto fan, they'll tell you, and I'm wearing Mitch Marner jersey because I've been a big Mitch Marner fan since his rookie year. But they do have really notable UFAs coming up this summer, so the pressure is on. If you're Kyle Dubas, there's a lot of pressure to try to do something here. Zach Hyman's UFA this summer, Wayne Simmons, Galchenyuk, who of course just came in and he'll probably be able to be kept for cheap. Spezza, much the same. If Spezza decided to come back next year, odds are it would not cost them a ton of money. Joe Thornton, it seems like it's a hired gun 1 year deal, probably goes back to San Jose or retires. Bogosian and Freddie Anderson. Freddie Anderson's the huge question mark, right? Their goaltending and whether or not they keep Freddie Anderson or what they do with their goaltending. So we'll see what Toronto does, but there's definitely a lot of pressure on them to prove that this year they're not going out in the first round. And so we'll see if they add at the deadline. I would think maybe a defenseman. And again, we're not going to see huge moves going on, but I would think maybe you pick up a defenseman. I pick up a little depth here and there. Colorado, 39 games, 26, 9-4. 56 points. So look how close they are to Carolina. The records are so very, very similar down this side of the board. Landeskog is due. So that's a huge potential contract right there. Brandon Saad is due. I don't think there's a huge raise there for Saad based on this year's numbers, but you know, we don't know what the market's going to do with certain players. Calvert, Belmar, so two of their bottom six forwards, as well as Grubauer. Grubauer is the huge one. Grubauer, so as excited as Avs fans are, remember, he keeps making it so he's going to be more expensive to keep. So the question Joe Sakic may have right now is, okay, so this might be our best chance And this might be the year to load up because, while I'm not talking a lot about RFAs, I do need to say Makar is up. So Makar's going to make some serious money. And if you add Makar and if you give Grubauer a big raise based on this year's stats, you're potentially putting yourself into a bit of a bind with the salary cap because you have McKinnon not too long from now. You have Landeskog due. This team, which has been a great budget team, that's going to change this offseason. So there's a lot of pressure, I would think, for Colorado to live up to their advanced billing. Many, myself included, saying they should be the Stanley Cup champion this year. There's some pressure to make sure they've got the exact right lineup to make that work. So we'll see what they do. Tampa Bay, 40 games, 27, 11, and 2 record, 56 points. So they're right there with everybody else. Like I said, these records are all very, very similar. Coleman is due this offseason. Gaudreau is due this offseason. So the two guys they pick up last year that helped them get to the Stanley Cup and win it, those depth guys they paid first-round draft picks for, now they're UFAs this summer. I would argue Coleman deserves a raise over what he's making. Gaudreau they might be able to bring back, but McElhinney's the other one on the board. I don't think he comes back next year. But Tampa's always in a bit of a cap crunch, so I don't know. Can they afford to keep Coleman? And how much pressure is there on them to try to load up at the deadline? Or do they look at this and say, you know what? We should have Kucherov back for the playoffs. We'll be fine. And then Kucherov comes back for the playoffs. All the conspiracy theories come running out at that point. And the whole idea that they've had Kucherov sit out the season drinking Mai Tais somewhere because cap reasons, because players do that, right? So we'll see what Tampa does between now and Monday. Islanders, 40 games, 26, 10, and 4 record, 56 points. So again, the 56 points right there with everybody else. Cizikas is a UFA this coming summer. Zajac and Palmieri are both rentals, so both of them can go back to New Jersey. And when people say, well, New Jersey got hosed, remember, both those players can go back to New Jersey this summer. And then New Jersey got a first-rounder, conditional fourth, and all that other stuff. And they get the guys back. So that could happen. And Andy Green, also a former Devil, could return to the Devils this summer. So all these players that Lou Lamoriello picked up could all say, we're heading back to New Jersey. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But for the Islanders, I do think there's some pressure on them to maybe add at the deadline. And again, with Zajac and Palmieri, that's huge, right? But I do think there'll probably be maybe one small move made by them, maybe a little bit of depth. Everybody's going to be looking for depth on their defense. You look at Tampa and Dallas last year in the run they went on, and they were both going to their depth on the blue line a lot, especially in Dallas's case, where you'd see Hanley came into the lineup and everybody kind of went, Hanley. And then he turned out to be okay. But yeah, this is definitely a necessity, having that blue line depth. Florida, 41 games, 26, 11, and 4 record, 56 points. Florida finally lives up to advanced billing. Florida's a team that I think it's 3 seasons in a row I picked them to make the playoffs. Every year they missed. So I went, I can't do it anymore. I can't pick Florida to make the playoffs because they just disappoint me. And this year they're going to make the playoffs. So there you go. You're welcome, I guess. Wenberg and Drieger are both UFAs. And of course, there's a lot of talk about Drieger, rightfully so, because Bobrovsky has to be protected during the expansion draft. He has a no movement clause. Drieger, a UFA this summer. There's been some talk about whether or not Florida might trade him. And it's possible that they do. You don't want to lose him for nothing. I think they're better off, though, to hold off till the offseason. Just keep him through the playoffs because you're probably going to be in a situation where there's a lot of games in a short period of time. Just keep him for the playoffs. And then if he plays well, you can trade him. And if he doesn't play well, maybe Seattle doesn't take him. So maybe you roll the dice there. Washington, 40 games, 25, 11, and 4 record, 54 points. So they're right there with everybody else. They're only 3 points back of Carolina for first overall in the NHL. Ovechkin is UFA this summer. I think we all understand that's going to be a huge turning point for the franchise, whatever they do with that contract, whether they keep him or, jaw-droppingly, if they don't, then that just changes the whole picture. Connor Sherry, Zdeno Chara, also UFAs. I will say this. Ovechkin could be highly motivated knowing he's a UFA this summer. Chara could be highly motivated knowing this could be his last year. Both of those players on the same team highly motivated. That might be enough to get Washington over the top. But again, another move that may end up helping them is Lundqvist coming back, just as that mentorship role. If that happens at the end of this month, that could be huge. Vegas 38 games, 25-11-2 record, 52 points, and it does feel like Vegas needs to do something. It feels like they're kind of in a no man's land right now that they don't really want to be in. So Nosek and Martinez are the UFAs on this team. Again, I just went through the list on Cap Friendly and tried to pick the guys that are, potentially big names or just noteworthy. And Nosek's noteworthy because he's part of what might be one of the best fourth lines in the league. And honestly, for Vegas, it kind of feels like they've slipped the last 10 games, and they do need something. And it's up to the brain trust with the Vegas Golden Knights to decide how to resolve the issues this team has. They're not issues in net. Their net is fine. And I don't know whether it's blue line or whether it's just the forwards seem to be getting cold at the same time. So maybe adding a top six forward, maybe a hockey trade, right? We'll see. But it does feel like Vegas might be in the midst of what could be their last best chance. And I say that because, again, you may not be able to keep Martinez due to the cap next year. Fleury's going to get older. Eventually, that's going to matter. And this might be their best chance to win one in their fourth year. So we'll see, right? Pittsburgh, 40 games, 25-13-2 record for 52 points. So we're getting to 5 points out of first overall. Yeah, this is insane that we've got so many teams that are so close, but it's a short season, right? So over an 80-game season, this would definitely spread out a little bit more, but it doesn't over a shorter schedule. And for Pittsburgh, they don't really have to worry about losing anybody. Sevier, Rodriguez, Ceci, if they want to keep any of these three guys, they can keep them for cheap. The one thing Pittsburgh has to worry about is Crosby's a year older, Malkin's a year older, and for Pittsburgh, I don't know. I don't know if I see them as a legit Stanley Cup contender right now. And the reason I say this is because they have lost 9 of their last 10 playoff games. And that's including the games they lost to Montreal and how that went. So in a playoff environment, how are they going to do? Because you've got the Islanders, you've got the Capitals. If it's the Capitals against the Penguins, do we see a revisiting of past frustrations for the Caps, or do the Caps take the Penguins out? And do the Penguins have enough right now in order to take the Capitals out, to take them to a full 7 games? The one interesting thing with Pittsburgh is that between Jari and DeSmith, they've both been good. The one question, though, is can either of them be great in the playoffs? Because that's traditionally what you need to get over the top in a playoff series, is to have that superior goaltending. And it is a question I have with Pittsburgh right now. But again, Crosby and a Game 7 situation is usually golden. The Oilers, 41 games, 25-14-2 record, 52 points. So again, 52 points. Right here, this is insane. Number of teams that all have the same amount of points. For Edmonton, there is a lot of pressure right now. There's a lot of pressure because we've got Smith's career. We don't know if he's going to play past this year. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. And if he does, he's probably going to cost them more money than he's costing them right now because he's playing great. And then you've got Nugent Hopkins, who they should be able to re-sign, but they haven't yet. Chason, Haas, depth forwards, they can replace them, obviously. On the blue line, it gets interesting because you got Adam Larson, who's UFA, and you've got Barry. So Barry has definitely shown this year that he deserves a huge raise. Now, does he try to earn more money somewhere else, or does he go to the Oilers and say, you know what, I understand I'm getting these points because I play with these guys, McDavid and Draisaitl. Probably won't get those points elsewhere, and I enjoy it in Edmonton. So I'm going to stick around and give you guys a bit of a discount. That's the question I have with Barry and with the Oilers. And that's really when you know a team has made it, is when guys are giving back money in order to stay because they want to succeed. And it's a luxury some teams have, and it can get very frustrating when you're cheering for a team that doesn't have that kind of thing where players are giving you a discount. They're like, look, if I'm staying here, you're paying me. So, Minnesota, Winnipeg first. Can't skip Winnipeg. 40 games, 24-13-3 record for 51 points. So they're right there with the Oilers, right? There's a long list for Winnipeg. Stastny, Perreault, Lowry, Thompson, Lewis. That's all the forwards. Now, a lot of this is depth, right? And then on the blue line, you've got Forbert and Pullman, and then in net, you've got Brossoit. The interesting thing for me with Winnipeg is that, it's another really good year for Hellebuck. He's definitely in his prime. You want to strike while the iron's hot. And they've got a very good young core at forward. They've got a solid, if unspectacular, blue line. And, Pionk's do, I think, as well as an RFA. There's some things there in terms of potential cap problems for them down the road. But they're in a good position to pick something up at the deadline and maybe make a run out of this. The North, it feels like, is kind of wide open. Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Any of these three teams could potentially be your representative out of the North. I'm not forgetting Montreal. They're just not on the board because they don't have the same amount of points. But any of the top four teams in the North, yeah, I could see them representing the North in the Final Four. And then it's a matter of, do you have what you need to get through whoever you face in those Final Four? So that's a question Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to have to ask himself. And there's some contract decisions he'll make after this season. Minnesota, 38 games, 24-12-2 record, 50 points. Their list of players who are unrestricted, Johansson, Bonino, Bjugstad all up front, and then you've got Cole and you've got Hunt on the blue line. So nobody that's not completely unreplaceable or irreplaceable, but you get the feeling with Minnesota right now with Kaprizov and with the goaltending they're getting that this is kind of a strike while the iron's hot team as well. That for Bill Guerin, he's made the right decisions so far, even while they were questionable at the time. They've been the right decisions so far. And so, yeah, maybe you do go kind of all in on this. Maybe Minnesota's a team to keep an eye on and see if they make a big move, right? And then you've got Boston lingering around, hanging around. Not a fantastic record, but they have the 6 overtime losses, so those are 6 points right there. Thank you very much. 37 games, 21-10-6 record, 48 points. So they only have 48 points, but they've played less games than everybody else on the board. So they're 9 points behind the Carolina Hurricanes, but they've played 2 less games. So they're not playing as well as Carolina, and I won't make any kind of comment or argument that they are, but they're a team that are on what would traditionally be considered a 100-point pace. So you can make the argument that they're still at a contender status. But this is the last year, I believe, for Boston as a legit contender. And I say that because you've got Krejci's contract's up. I don't know if he comes back. If he does, it'll probably be for less money. I'm going to say it is going to be for less money. You got Corrali up front, depth forward. Miller, Camphor, Tenorti, all depth guys on the blue line. I don't know that Miller comes back. I think Boston still feels they need to fix that blue line. I don't think they can fix it at the deadline. I think it's going to be an off-season thing. And then, interestingly, you've got Halak and Rask in net. Now, I've said recently that as a Bruins fan, I feel better after seeing Vladar and Swayman in their appearances in Boston, and Swayman starting his 3rd straight game tomorrow. But yes, you do have to have a veteran in and amongst them to keep things going. Now, whether you decide to bring back Halak, whether you talk Rask into coming back, it feels like this is probably Rask's last season. Rask might be looking at how things are going with Swayman and Vladar and be saying, I'm happy for them. I think I can move on. So we'll see what they decide to do, but it does feel like of the teams on the board, the pressure is probably highest on Colorado, Toronto, Washington, and Boston, and all for different reasons. So, but I'd be interested to know which team that's on this board do you think has the most pressure to win this season? Which one has no pressure to win this season? And which team do you think next year falls by the wayside that's in this top 13? Could be a couple. And which one do you think is legit? They're going to stick around, and we're going to look back 5 years from now and say, hey, this is where it all started. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always, and as well, who do you think they rent out at the deadline? This is as close to trade speculation as I get. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Looking forward to the live streaming on Monday for the trade deadline. And I'll get that all set up and have that all pre-planned out. And don't worry, you guys will have plenty of warning. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.